You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It's Thursday, January 22nd. It's 2026. It's 7:35 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I thought that I would answer a question that we get quite a lot around here, which is when to stay in a relationship and when to leave a relationship. The focus usually when people ask that is mostly on romantic relationships, but it really does apply to any relationship. And the answer is when you give up hope that you can negotiate conflict in the relationship is when it's time to go. But how do you know that you've given up hope around negotiating a conflict, and how do you get to that hopeless place? Zizek, do you know the philosopher Zizek says that hopelessness actually is the ground from which change happens, that until you actually get to a hopeless place, you're not really willing to move away from your commitment to trying to get things to work. But I would say that that's actually the change that happens is that time is that you move out of the restrictions of the relationship that is not working. When we are born into family systems, the thing that happens is that we learn the conflict resolution strategies that our family system employs in negotiating relationships. And then you move through life essentially employing that strategy. We learn it not so much as a direct instruction, but by observing the adults in our family system and how they resolve conflict. We're not really paying attention, nor do we have the capacity as children to discern whether it's a good strategy or a poor strategy. We just watch how people do it. And then we learn to do that, and it gets embedded into our perceptual database. We use that perceptual database to create the experience of reality that we have. So I like to say you have the capacity to sense an object that can be sensed when there's contact. Consciousness of that sensing experience arises. We then, the body really evaluates whether it's urgent and needs immediate attention, whether it's neutral and we don't ever really need to get to it, or whether or not there's time for something pleasant. And then that each of those mind moments as it hits the top of the queue is compared to the already defined meanings in the perceptual database. And if there's one close enough, that attaches to the present moment. It rolls into the experience of the present moment. And our understanding of what's actually is happening there comes from that. So we live in the experience of the present moment that's been defined actually by the experiences of the past. And if there's conflict in that experience and it threatens our attachment system, the attachment system switches on and the exploration system switches off. If the emotional system is activated, the cognitive system switches off. And so you're in this place of an emotional response using your conditioned attachment experience, your meaning of life. And you go into a rote response which matches the strategies that you learned in childhood. That's essentially the way that it goes. We look at this through the attachment lens, of course. Secure people tend to collaboratively work with each other to define these difficult experiences and to negotiate something a solution to them, which is going to settle the situation. One of the things that defines secure functioning relationships, which is different from insecure and disorganized relationships, is a confidence that secure people have that they're going to be able to collaborate with the partners in relationship, and they're going to be able to come up with solutions to the conflicts in the relationships that are a win-win for each of the people in the relationship. So they don't tend to threaten abandonment or threaten the relationship because of conflict in the relationship. They're confident that they can resolve it in a way that will be a win for each of the parties in the relationship. When you do that, of course, the conflicts settle out of the relationship. You make an agreement for care that you're going to do, and they make an agreement for care that they're going to do. So when the conflict arises, you both really know what to do, and it's been agreed upon, and you each do it because you're committed to the relationship. And those kinds of solutions settle the conflicts of the relationships, and they become progressively more stable over time because of that. The more of that collaboration you do, the more that you negotiate these win-win agreements, the less often conflict in the relationship becomes disruptive. Is that making sense? Insecure and disorganized people don't do that. They don't really collaborate very well with each other to settle them. There's more of a power dynamic in the settling. The one with the more power threatens abandonment. And one of the things that's true about human beings in relationship to being abandoned by essential relationships is that we all capitulate, we all fold in those moments. And we often settle on agreements that actually, had we not been pressured into, we wouldn't have accepted, and also agreements that over time we can't really fulfill. Eventually, it becomes too bitter for us to keep the agreements, and we stop keeping them. And then the conflict arises again in the relationship, and then we have to renegotiate it. And it's that process of being pushed into an agreement that actually isn't something that you can manage long term. The collapse of the agreement, the arising of the conflict, and the renegotiation of the same conflict in the relationship, which is the source of the hopelessness that arises, that certain conflicts in the relationship can't be resolved. And once you get to a place where you don't think that you can resolve the conflict, you essentially give up on the relationship. And that would be the end. Now, it's very common for people to draw out the ending of relationships in a spectacularly crazy fashion. But it is also possible not to do that. The dynamics of secure functioning relationships are collaborative. The dynamics of insecure, organized relationships, most commonly a dismissing person with a preoccupied person, is a transactional relationship. So tit for tat, you do this for me, I'll do that for you. And it's back and forth like that. That differs from the whole care of a collaborative relationship. I take on your whole care and I do it because I've agreed to do it. And you take on my whole care and you do it because you've agreed to do it. And it isn't in that exchange per episode that's so characteristic of transactional relationships. Disorganized people tend to use trauma bonding. So they bond with somebody, and the solidness of that person and the morphing into the avatar of the perpetrator is fairly fluid. So they're coming and going from being in relationship with the person that's actually there and the person who was the source of the trauma that disorganized them. Those relationships tend to be much more volatile than a transactional relationship would be because of the coming and going of the dissociative aspects of the relationship in each of the parties in those trauma bonded relationships. We all come into relationships with our conditioning. And a lot of us, the organized end of that spectrum of people, um, upwards of 70% of people tend to be able to negotiate agreements that are at least long lasting, let's say. Maybe not a whole lifetime long lasting, but years long in that sense. Um, and so it isn't so much a question of um, not attempting to develop agreements in relationships that will allow them to last. In any relationship, really, there's an opportunity for negotiating a secure functioning relationship without doing the deep dive into the native attachment system, and uprooting that and replacing it with secure functioning. If you can learn what the dynamics of secure functioning are, and you can begin to make agreements with people that are essentially collaborative for the overall care, then you can negotiate a reliable relationship. I would suspect that the first agreement there is that you don't threaten the relationship over small things. You don't use the threat of abandonment as a negotiating tool or as a lever to get what you want in terms of behavior from the other person. You agree to be in the relationship, and you agree not to threaten the relationship. And that opens the door to effectively negotiating agreements between you that will allow the relationship to function smoothly. Each of us want to be taken care of in some way. Now, this doesn't automatically mean that we want to be intimate in the relationship. You'll notice that in the dynamic of insecure relationships, the reason that it's transactional is that neither party really wants intimacy in the relationship. You'll notice in a dynamic of secure functioning, intimate relationships, when there's a request for closeness, that's met with closeness. And when there's a request for space, that's meant for space. So you have a dynamic of moving close and providing space, moving close and providing space. In transactional relationships, and to some degree in disorganized relationships, there's a distance that each party is maintaining. So one party is seducing and the other is playing hard to get. And then once there's a sense of connection, the seducing partner begins to withdraw, and then that would be the dismissing partner begins to withdraw, and the preoccupied partner begins to pursue. The pursuit of the dismissing partner is what reassures them that you won't abandon them. And the pursuit of the for proximity is the thing that reassures the preoccupied person that when they have the proximity, they feel a sense of safety. Preoccupied people tend to have this swap where the empathetic experience of their regulator becomes the dominant emotional experience. And so if they're proximate to their regulator and they're able to regulate them, they feel regulated. That's the main operation of the relationship, which is not actually intimate. So the preoccupied person is in pretend mode, not presenting themselves authentically, and the dismissing person is in an idealizing mode, which is also not authentic. So you might say that the way out of insecure and disorganized attachment is to move into an authentic expression. How do you know what that is? And then how do you regulate yourself well enough that you can then express it? Particularly in the way that we initially know who we are is through the reflection of the caregiver who informs us who we are. So in that earliest crucible of discovering who we are, we really understand who we are in the reflection of our caregiver's experience of taking care of us. So, did you have a caregiver that was resourced, that could manage your care, that did not find it burdensome, that didn't want to do something else, that enjoyed the process of taking care of you, so that they reflected back to you their delight in taking care of you and their interest in taking care of you? Did you get to express yourself authentically? And did you get to tell somebody else who you were and what your experience of life was? And did they enjoy that experience and reflect that back to you? And was it accompanied by interest? Then you know yourself, and then you know what actually interests you because you've been encouraged to explore the things that matter to you. There could be pressure to do well in the world. That often comes with security. But the pressure is to do the things that matter to you well, not the things that matter to the caregiver or the way that they want you to be perceived in the world. It's when you don't have the caregiver that's mirroring back to you mostly accurate perception that we can get lost in the creation of the perception of ourselves. An idealized child who has a dismissing caregiver demands of them idealization. And in that process, the child learns to suppress any expression of negative affect because it's not tolerated. They learn to over endow positive experiences. And that's the idealizing process, the upselling of positive experience and the negation of negative experience. They learn to be attentive to the moods and interests of the caregiver rather than representing their own interests. And in that process, they get the rewards that they want from the caregiver. That's the exchange. I idealize you, and you give me what I want. It's often not certainly not an authentic exchange. You don't actually get to know authentically who the caregiver is either because they're engaged in the idealizing process. You don't actually get to know the reality in which you live that well because of that. It's these sort of alternating presentations of what's real. In preoccupation, the inconsistent care is the thing that creates the involvement or the enmeshing in the mind states of the caregiver. And the caregiver can often role reverse the child so that the child becomes responsible for the care of the caregiver, the maintenance of the caregiver's emotional life, their mind states. And that entails being who the caregiver needs in the moment that they need somebody, which is also something that causes you to lose the sense of what's authentic to you. At least with dismissing people, they are able to explore pretty well. They tend to get stuck on secondary exploration and not primary exploration. What is the thing that really matters, that makes life meaningful? But preoccupied people also have quite a bit of inhibition in being able to explore. And so, in addition to figuring out how to regulate yourself emotionally and turn your attention back to you, you have to figure out how to explore. So that process of authenticity is to understand who you are and what your capabilities are and what actually matters to you, and the process of developing the skill set in order to be able to pursue the things that matter to you. And the purpose of relationships is to have the support that you need in order to really take big risks in your exploration. That's what a secure functioning relationship is really about. You having the support that you need so that you can pursue what's meaningful to you, and you provide the support for the person who supports you so that they can also have that. And there's a collaborative exchange in that. The benefit of which is that you get knowledge from the intimate expression of their exploration that's useful to you in your exploration, and you give to them insight into exploration that they can also use to support their exploration. And that synergy between primary explorations is the thing that really carries relationships over the long term. Insecure and disorganized relationships are not really based on a mutual primary exploration. They're based on secondary exploration in disorganized attachment, and really almost a fundamental survival mode in disorganized relationships. You can make insecure, organized, attached relationships stable and long lasting. But that's because the dismissing person provides a minimum level of care to the person who's basically in charge of taking care of the relationship. Now, depending on what that looks like, it's often material support, but also some involvement in or interest in. Usually in that kind of dynamic, there's a crisis in the relationship. There's a demand from the preoccupied person for care. And then the dismissing person, because they see that they value the relationship, provides that care. But it usually only lasts until the relationship stabilizes, and then the dismissing person thinks things have gone back to normal, and so they go back to the dynamic of they receive the care, and the preoccupied person provides the care in the relationship. And so you have that kind of back and forth in the relationship. Disorganized people, because their mentalizing is so low and their emotional regulation skills are so inadequate, the quality of those relationships is very volatile. And they can be so volatile that it prevents much functioning in other areas of life. And so what you notice in the disorganized community is after the disappointment of the teens and 20s and trying to be able to form relationships in the 30s, they begin to withdraw from attempting to form relationships. And so you'll see quite often in disorganized people that they make a decision not to attempt closeness in relationships because they create so much chaos that other areas of life are completely interfered with. And so they figure out how they're going to live life largely alone. And if they can crack that and figure out how to live alone, they end up living most of their life alone. Obviously, to a secure person, this would seem like a terrible fate, but the quality of relationships for disorganized people has always been very difficult. And the lack of that difficulty is actually often an improvement over the in the quality of life, and so they don't mind it so much. But the question really is when to stay and when to go in a relationship. And I would say that is this the quality of not so much the native attachment strategy or the native conditioning, but the willingness of each person in the relationship to come to the table and negotiate a stable relationship, which actually will support primary exploration rather than just secondary exploration. That's a fairly loaded statement in the sense that you would have to understand primary and secondary exploration and have some facility to do it. One of the things that I notice in insecure couplings, particularly the dismissing and preoccupied variety, is the difficulty of the dismissing person to support the preoccupied person, not only in learning to explore, but then off they go to explore and leave them alone without their primary regulator. And so, in that, the way that relationships, particularly in the Western affluent societies, go is you have one primary relationship, you have no close friends, and you have casual friends. And so that you're reliant entirely on one person to provide all of your emotional regulation. And you see this quite often where all of the activities that are social are engaged in as a couple. They don't have lives that are separate from the coupling because they require proximity to each other to be emotionally regulated. When you have set up your emotional regulation system that it's reliant on one other person and you're also their one regulator, the exploration then often becomes a combined exploration where you do it together. And that often compromises what would be a involving primary exploration and becomes a kind of secondary exploration instead. So moving out of that kind of coupling to a more dynamic support system where each of the people in a primary relationship have uh, other people that they can count on for emotional regulation. In the new version of Robin Dunbar's work, he calls this A plus relationships as opposed to A relationships, and that reports that that's actually the happiest constellation for people that want a primary relationship. One of the rules, of course, of primary relationships is that you do not discuss what happens in the relationship with anyone outside of the relationship without consent. And so Dunbar was describing couples who have designated people that you can talk about the dynamics of the relationship, particularly around negotiating conflict. Um, Part of that ruling, of course, is that you would never say something to somebody about your partner that if they overheard you saying it without you knowing that they were there, they wouldn't have a problem with what you describe is happening in the relationship. So that would be the proviso. But and he did report in the research that it was in a hetero uh, uh, sexual coupling, a male and a female, that it's usually the female that has the intimate social relationship, and the males don't. Um, I would say that males need that as much as females do, and that it might be the social conditioning that we were in, and that particularly when you move into the work environment and a male-dominated work environment, mainly the people that you engage with are competitors. And so that would be maybe less conducive to intimacy. And that the intimate friendship on that side of the hetero divide isn't necessarily um, um, open in that sense of intimate relationships. Can be certainly transactional, what we would call C relationships. You don't disclose everything, but you see them regularly, or C plus relationships, people that are close. How to be authentic. One of the things about being conditioned out of being authentic in relationships, and this was not an easy experience for anyone who has the conditioning that has pushed you out of easily or freely authentic into inauthentic, is the emotional intensity that often accompanies an authentic expression. If you're not so far down the rabbit hole, I like to say, of inauthenticity, and you still have an awareness of what your authentic experience is, you'll notice, and then each moment the authentic experience arises. But if you're frightened of expressing that, the inauthentic thing arises almost immediately. So the authentic experience arises. You're afraid of expressing it, so you have a spike of abandonment here, and then the mind manufactures the inauthentic thing, you could say, instead, which relieves the abandonment here, which um, can seduce you into the idea that being inauthentic is actually supportive of the relationship, which in fact it's undermining of the relationship. And if you can push into the authentic expression, of course, the abandonment terror intensifies. Of course, you could ask for reassurance and get reassurance from the person, and that would be relieving of the abandonment terror and supportive of the relationship. But you'll also typically experience what I call the terrible sadness, which is this experience of, particularly for insecure and disorganized people, as you begin to be authentic, that you could have been authentic all along, and you could have asked for the reassurance you wanted all along, and that would have supported the development of these uh, long lasting and useful relationships. But because you were so conditioned in early childhood to suppress the authentic in favor of the inauthentic expression, which matched what your caregivers needed from you, that 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 you self-selected out of intimate, authentic relationships in favor of inauthentic relationships long after you were compelled into doing it. So little by little, you reclaim that capacity to be authentic, um, and and then it becomes effortless. And it really is about areas of yourself and what's authentically true about you that you know. Um, and, you know, one time, 10 times, 100 times you make that gesture of authenticity. And each time the abandonment terror reaction reduces until you don't have it anymore. And then you can be freely authentic in that area of your life. But it's not universal, and you have to dig out all of the different areas of conditioning that you experienced. So it isn't a question of authenticity slipping into inauthenticity, but an authentic expression that then matches the consent that you have for the level of intimacy somebody else is willing to receive from you. You may notice that people like to draw out of you intimacies that go beyond your uh, interest or consent, and that you then have to maintain these more rigid boundaries. But you may also notice, particularly in the disorganized community, that you are so socially isolated. When there's that invitation, you often can overshare and feel vulnerable and exposed uh, We may even think that experience of uh, extreme vulnerability and exposure is what intimacy is, but actually intimacy is a sense of safety, a feeling of safety. You're free to express yourself because the relationship is solid, and nothing you express could cause the other person to abandon you. That they want you to be authentic, that they want to know you. Whereas in a kind of rushed or um, insecure foundation for intimacy, we often feel vulnerable to betrayal. We feel exposed. And that often, particularly in the disorganized community, causes you to withdraw. And so what you notice in that community is there's these rushing in and overexposing moments that are then followed by withdrawal as an attempt to balance that. Whereas secure people tend to go slowly and reveal small pieces and offer small occasions of trust and actually track how somebody responds so that you open up more and more to people that have showed up reliably and are expressive of a delight in the intimacies that they receive at these graduating levels. I would also um, draw a line at violence in relationships or some kind of sadism in relationships. Um, a lot of us grow up in environments where uh, some kind of physical violence is an ordinary experience, or some kind of psychological sadism is an ordinary experience. And what that tends to do to us when we have those experiences in childhood is when we get to adult level relationships, our pain thresholds are too high. And so we don't really even register these small episodes of some kind of violence in the relationship. It isn't until the violence gets overt or extreme that it even registers for us, whereas people that don't grow up in those kinds of environments have long since left um, those kinds of situations. There's even, I guess, a potential to eroticize that in childhood and then find ourselves in adulthood um, in reenactments of that. But I find in the work that I do that it's so undermining of a sense of safety and so undermining of a sense of self-confidence that um, what we really need to do is lower our thresholds of pain way down so that even a small level of this is too much. And we determine not to do it, not to carry on in that way. Um, I would guess a fundamental dishonesty in the relationship. I might even put it in that category. I know the popular term for it is gaslighting, but the mechanism is where somebody undermines confidence in your perception of what's happening, so that they don't have to abide by the agreements that they make with you. Or you may, even if you're conditioned to do that, find yourself doing that with other people. I would say that you should endeavor to give that up, or you should endeavor to refuse it from someone else. Secure functioning relationships are based on uh, uh, fully disclosing an accurate representation of what's happening. And the further that you move away from that, the more difficult it is going to be to make a stable relationship, which is actually going to be useful to you in supporting your primary exploration, which is actually the point of all of this, that we are able to go out into the world and discover the things that matter to us and pursue them because that's the thing that provides richness and meaning in life. And that what we're attempting to do is build around ourselves these social networks that allow us to do that. And then because it's so useful to be involved intimately in other people's discovery, other people's exploration, to support other people so that they're willing to come and express in an open way what they're discovering. In insecure relationships, particularly amongst dismissing people, they really don't share the interest of primary exploration too readily. They learn in childhood to keep it secret as a way of preserving it. And it's an astonishing thing, really, for them to begin to open to you and to express it. And so we really do need to see it as valuable in the way that it is. And preoccupied people really need tremendous support in their these fledgling attempts at exploration, so that they can begin to develop the skill and then discover the thing that matters to them, and then develop the capacity to explore it. That's a lot of support that's necessary. But the reward, of course, of providing that support is that you're the person that they come to to express what they've discovered, and then those expressions really help so much in figuring out how to get at the thing that matters to you. So it's totally worth doing. Plus, it's so much fun to see that happen for people, to have them discover what's meaningful, and to see them go off and find out, and then the way that they look when they discover something and come back and tell you. Such a gift to be the one that somebody tells that stuff. And it's a short, brutish life in that Hobbesian way of thinking about it. It doesn't last so long, and the sooner you get at it, the harder you go, the better, I think. And to have those people gathered around you. And there's histories in this, of course. The longer you know people, the more they know you too, and the variations of you and the variations of your interests and movements in the world, and just a marvelous shorthand in understanding your progression. And sometimes we can lose track of that ourselves. We're not, the human condition is not one of perfect or even remotely perfect or even good self-reflection. We really are so dependent on the reflections of other people to understand ourselves, and to have a reliable person in front of you that has known you for decades. When you know that core group of people, for me, I've known, coming up on 50 years, to sit at a dinner table. A couple of years ago, or I guess the winter before last, I went out to dinner with a group of friends, and we'd known each other at that point for 47 years. I mean, it's an astonishing thing. You may think that you have a good memory of this, of all of that, of 45 years, but you tend to remember the things that matter to you, and other people tend to remember the things that matter to them, and their experiences of you are going to be rich and filled with things that you haven't thought of because they didn't matter to you in the same way that they mattered to them. And that flow and uh, uh, seeing yourself, but also seeing other people the way that you think of them, and then how um, other people in the group reflect on that. It's just a marvelous experience of life, which I think is what we're going for, isn't it? This idea that we're alive for this uh, flash of time and all that happens in that flash of time, and how we're able to navigate it. That's the thing, and who we travel with, and that admiration that we can have for the people around us. It's really marvelous, I think. So find the people that are good for you and recognize their value and support those relationships so that you have them for a long time, and pull the energy. It's not so much these abruptions as these flows of energy, flowing energy into relationships that are useful to you, and withholding energy from relationships that are not. How's that? Good enough? Would you like to do some meditation? What would you like to do? Ideal parent figure, insight in Vipassana, or concentration and insight practice, Vipassana, or heart practice. We have a heart practice. Two heart practice. Three. All right. Loving kindness has taken it. So go ahead and settle in. Okay, let go of the meditation. How's that? Good? Good. Um, let's see. Saturday is the third day of the current level one that's going on. It's been a good class. So if you're interested in jump into it. We have a level two starting on February 20th, which is a Friday from 10:30 to 12:30. I think that should be pretty good. The workshop that we were going to do this Tuesday at 1 p.m. has been pushed to next Tuesday at 1 p.m. So there's still time for that. It's going to be a conversation about addiction. I think that's about it. Kaleidoscope is tomorrow if you want the monthly meeting of our Sangha. Um, let's see what the topic is for that. We're going to talk about sustaining purpose without over identifying with achievement or productivity. I like to call that socialism instead of neoliberalism. um, let's see what else. And then we're in February all of a sudden. Anyway, it's up on the website. Take a look. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope if you're in a position and you could make a donation to us, you will. It helps support me and also the work that Mettagroup is doing. There's a link on the website for that. Just make a donation of any amount. Has my camera been off this whole time? Ay, ay, ay.
Yes, it has. It was weird.
Sorry about that.
It's a whole different experience for us.
Is it? Oh,
Look, Paul shaved his beard while the cameras were off.
yeah. Next time that happens, if you would let me know, that would be helpful to me.
I'm just glad you're all right. I was worried.
No, no, no.
I thought you had transcended into like a different
Into a disembodied voice.
plane, like a kind
That's right. He didn't want to scare us.
Hilarious. Nope.
Oh,
I
good.
just didn't notice that it was off. So
Yale.
We all very authentically refuse to tell you.
I was wondering why
Everybody had their camera
off. Funny.
We're following the trend.
Yes, indeed.
I thought I came in late and I thought it was like, oh, I missed something. Oh, it's
My
so
apology.
good to see you.
Thank you.
Buddy.
See you tomorrow.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.